Okay, for this class, you will not be using a calculator until we get to trigonometry, which is not until second semester. Okay, so, and just want to remind you, and I'm not trying to insult anyone's intelligence here, okay? But sometimes when we have something that some people will have forgotten, I'll remind you like the day before you need it. We'll need this in tomorrow's lesson. So we need to be able to do operations with integers. Remember that integers, in case you've forgotten, are positive and negative whole numbers and also zero. So we'll start with the really simple things. If you're adding two integers together that have the same signs, if they're both positive, that's one of those first things you learned when you were in elementary school. You just add the two values together. 7 plus 8 is, anybody, quickly? 15, thank you. And how much is 23 plus 34? 57, thank you. Now, if you're adding two negative numbers together, we still just add the 8 and the 5, but we'll get a larger negative number. Since 8 plus 5 is 13, negative 8 plus negative 5 is negative 13. Same thing here. We got negative 37 plus negative 24. They're working together. They're both negative. So when we add them, we just add the 37 and the 24, which is 61, and this will be negative 61. So the rule here is add the two values and keep the sign. So if it was positive to begin with, they're both positive numbers, you still have a positive number. You add two negative numbers together, you still have a negative number. Where people have trouble sometimes is when the signs are not alike. Now, there's a whole bunch of different ways you can do this. When I teach this to 7th graders, I teach them to put pluses and minuses and zero out however many zero out. Again, I'm not trying to insult anybody's intelligence here, and I don't think you should spend time doing this, but this is what's going on. If we're adding 6 and negative 8, all of these add up to 0, and I've got two negatives still left, so that's negative 2. If you ever absolutely get stuck, this is not a bad way to do it. Here for 9 plus negative 4, we would have 9 positives and 4 negatives. These all add up to one big fat 0, and we've got 5 positives. But there's got to be a better way of doing that, right? Well, what's the difference between 9 and 4? How far apart are 9 and 4? 5. And are there more positives or more negatives? Positives. And here, what's the difference between 8 and 6? 2. And are there more positives or more negatives? More negatives, so our answer is negative. So that's what this is talking about. And if you're doing the pluses and minuses, that's fine as long as you have really small numbers. But if you had negative 63 plus 97, that's going to take a while, right? It's a good learning tool, but it's not good in the long run. So the rule here is subtract the values and use the sign of the greater value. Or the larger value. Either way you want to say it. And the way I think about this is when you have a positive number and a negative number and you're adding them together, they're working against each other. Right? They're opposites, so they work against each other. So for this, we'll just take the 97 and the 63. That's 34. We have more positive numbers than we have negative, so it's positive 34. For this one, same idea. We're adding a positive and a negative together. So we'll subtract 28 minus 19, which is 9. And there's more positive than there is negative, so that's 9. For the next one, we're adding a positive and a negative, so they're working against each other. So we'll subtract. Let's see, that's going to be what, 18? And there's more negative than there is positive, so that's negative 18. It's always the same. When we're adding a positive and a negative, we'll take 85 minus the 46. Let's see, that would be 40, but that's one more, so this is 39. There's more positive than negative in this case, so that's positive 39. Any questions about that? All right, it's important that you know how to do that so that you can do this next bit, which is subtraction. So, back when you were in elementary school, you did simple subtraction, where both numbers are positive, and the second integer is always smaller than the first one. Because at some point someone said you can't take 6 from 2, which isn't really true. It's just that you have to have negative numbers in order to do it. So 8 minus 5, the difference between those is 3. 23 and 18, the difference between those two is 5. Now, frequently when we subtract, it looks more complicated than this. And when it does, remember this rule. Since addition and subtraction are opposites, subtracting a number is the same as adding the opposite. So, if we have 8 minus negative 7, I can change this to adding by changing the 7 to a positive 7. I add the opposite, and 8 plus 7 is 15. If I have negative 6 minus 5, well, that's the same thing as negative 6 plus negative 5. Now I'm adding two negative numbers together. So 6 plus 5 is 11. And I keep the sign. There are 11 total negatives. If I have negative 23 minus negative 9, I make it plus the opposite of negative 9, which is positive 9. So I still subtract. And that's 14. And again, I have more negative than I have positive, so that's negative 14. All right, so for this one, Gerson, tell me how I should rewrite this. Exactly right, well done. Negative 16 plus negative 11. So I'm adding two negative numbers. They're working together, so we combine them and get 27, and this is negative 27. Chris, tell me how to rewrite this one, please, ma'am. Very good. Negative 47 plus 8. All right. When I'm adding and I have a positive and a negative. Stetson, you with us?
Yeah.
You okay? So tell me, when you have a negative and a positive and we're adding them together, what do we do? Are they working together or are they working against each other?
They're working against each other.
So we're going to subtract. So 47 minus 8 is 39. And anybody, is this going to be positive 39 or negative 39? Negative, because I've got more negative than I have positive. Blake, tell me how to rewrite this next one.
Negative 53 plus minus 72, or negative 72.
So you changed this to a plus. Did you do the opposite?
No,
So it should be
plus 72.
plus 72. There you go. And like the previous one, these are working against each other. So we'll subtract. See, that's 19. There's more positive than negative, so it's positive 19. Paige, tell me how to rewrite this next one, please.
24 plus 15.
Exactly. And once we've rewritten it, this is just basic addition. 24 plus 15 is 39. Samira, tell me how to rewrite this one, please, ma'am.
6 plus 46.
Yeah, 6 plus 46. And now again, that's just basic addition. 6 plus 46 is 52. Grant, tell me how to rewrite this last one, please.
-9 plus -24.
Thank you, sir. And since they're both negative, working together or working against each other? Anybody? They're working together. So we're going to add them. 24 and 9 is 33. So this is negative 33. Going through this pretty quickly because hopefully this is just knocking some rust off, not teaching you something you've never learned before. If this is something that you're really bad at, feel free to come in before school sometime. We'll sit down and work a bunch of them together. Okay? If you need the practice, I'm happy to help you practice this. All right. So, the last part of the notes today, we're going to be solving equations with a fractional factor. So this is an equation that we're going to start using soon. It's not important that you know what any of this stands for at this point, but this is an equation that you're going to have memorized. M equals half of E1 plus E2. Again, don't worry about what it stands for yet. We'll get to that. Now, if we're solving for M when we're given E1 and E2, that's really straightforward. So I'm going to write out the equation. M equals 1/2 of parentheses E1 plus E2. I'm looking for the value of M, so I'm just going to leave it M. And this will be half of negative 24 plus 18. I'm adding a positive and a negative together. So I don't need to change anything. Are they working together or against each other? They're working against each other, so we subtract. 24 minus 18 is 6. And there's more negative than positive. So m is going to be half of negative 6. So m is equal to negative 3. So that's just following order of operations. Do what's inside the parentheses, then do what's outside. No algebra involved in that. But we will do ones where we're going to have to solve either for E1 or E2. And we'll have to use some algebra for that. So find the value of E1 when m is negative 17 and E2 is 47. All right, so first thing first, I write out the formula. M is equal to half of E1 plus E2. If you'll write out the formula each time you use it, and try not to look back at the last time you used it, you'll memorize it a lot faster. Substituting in the things that I know that m is negative 17. E1 is what I want to know, so I'm just going to leave it E1. And E2 is 47. For this particular problem, you actually have two choices as to what you do next algebraically. You could distribute the 1/2. I personally don't ever do that, or at least not very often. Because especially on this one, half of 47 is not a nice number, is it? It's not a whole number, certainly. So what I do instead, when I'm trying to solve a problem like this, is I want to get rid of the 1/2. To get rid of the 1/2, I'm simply going to multiply it times 2. And to be fair, I'm going to multiply the other side by 2 also. Why do I do that? Well, I'll show you in just a second. 2 times negative 17, it's negative 34, equals 2 times 1/2. Well, if I have 2 1/2s, I've got 1 whole, right? 2 times 1/2 is just 1, and 1 times anything is, well, whatever the anything was. So this is just going to be E1 plus 47. I like doing it this way because, look, I don't have any fractions now. I've gotten rid of the fraction. To solve this, we'll subtract 47 from both sides. So I've got negative 34 minus 47. Since it's a subtraction problem and it looks ugly, I'm going to rewrite it. Negative 34 plus negative 47. I'm adding two negative numbers together. They're working the same direction. So I'll add their values together. It's 81. So negative 81 is E1. And just to show you that it doesn't matter whether you're solving for E1 or E2, let's do one where they ask for E2. Find the value of E2 when m is 63 and E1 is negative 28. So we'll start with our formula. M equals half of E1 plus E2. Substitute in the things that we know. We know m is 63 is equal to one half of E1 is negative 28 plus E2. If you want to, you can distribute the 1/2. Again, I almost never do, but it's not bad on this one because you can take half of the negative 28 pretty easily. But you're going to have to get rid of the half sooner or later. I like to get rid of it sooner. So I'm going to multiply the 1/2 times 2. And to be fair, I'll need to multiply the 63 times 2. So that's 126 is equal to the 2 times the 1/2 is 1. So I should have negative 28 plus E2. We'll add 28 to both sides. Here I'm just adding two positive numbers together. So it's 154 is E2. Hey, any questions about that? Okay, then I have a worksheet for you for tonight's assignment.